When the lawyer called me that Tuesday morning, she said 5 words that changed my life. Your brother stole your inheritance. $300,000. Gone while I was in rehab fighting for my life. But Camden didn't just steal my money. He told everyone I was dead. He had fake papers and everything. The lawyer dragged him to court. That's when the real secrets came out. My dead mother was alive. I wasn't my dad's real daughter. And there was a family secret so big, it made the stolen money look like nothing. Here's what will haunt you about this story. What if someone you trusted completely had been lying to save you from an even worse truth? And when you finally have the power to destroy them back, how do you know if it's justice or just revenge? I never thought a phone call could destroy your whole world in 3 minutes. But that's exactly what happened on a cold Tuesday morning in March, 6 months after I got out of rehab. My name is Sage Murphy, and I'm 28 years old. I've been clean for 8 months now, the longest I've ever made it. My apartment is small but clean. My job at the local animal shelter doesn't pay much, but I wake up every morning grateful to be alive. That morning started like any other. I was feeding my rescue cat Buttons when my phone rang. He's a fat orange tabby who showed up at the shelter missing half his tail and most of his trust in humans. We understood each other perfectly. "Come on, Buttons," I said, pouring his food into the blue ceramic bowl I'd bought at a thrift store. "Time for breakfast." He rubbed against my legs, purring like a tiny motor. Simple moments like this still amazed me. 6 months ago, I couldn't take care of myself, let alone another living thing. Now I had a routine, responsibilities, a reason to get up each day. My phone started ringing from the kitchen counter. The caller ID showed a number I didn't know. During my using days, unknown numbers meant dealers, angry landlords, or bill collectors. Now they usually meant wrong numbers or telemarketers. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up on the 4th ring. "Hello? Hello, is this Sage Murphy?" The voice was professional, serious like a doctor or a lawyer. "Yes, this is Sage. My name is attorney Patricia Holbrook. I'm calling about your father's estate. I believe there's been some confusion that needs to be cleared up immediately." My heart stopped. Dad had died 2 years ago while I was deep in my addiction. I barely remember the funeral. Everything from that time is a blur of pills, needles, and shame. My brother Camden had handled everything while I was too high to function. I sat down hard on my kitchen chair, the same wobbly chair that came with the furnished apartment. "I'm sorry, but I think there's been a mistake," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "My brother Camden took care of all that. He told me Dad left everything to him because of my problems." There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear papers shuffling. "Ms. Murphy, I need you to come to my office today. There are some documents you need to see. Your brother has been, let's say, less than honest about your father's final wishes." My hands started shaking. Not from withdrawal this time, but from pure shock. I'd been clean long enough to know the difference. "What do you mean?" "Your father left half of everything to you, Sage. The house, the savings, his business. You were supposed to inherit $300,000. But according to my records, you never signed any paperwork giving up your rights." The phone slipped from my hand and clattered to the floor. Buttons jumped back, startled by the noise. I stared at the phone lying there, Attorney Holbrook's voice still coming through the speaker, sounding tiny and far away. $300,000. While I was sleeping in my car and stealing food from gas stations, my brother was living in Dad's house. While I was pawning everything I owned for drug money, he was driving Dad's truck. While I was lying in gutters wondering if I would live to see another day, he was running Dad's auto repair shop like he owned it all. Because I thought he did own it all. I picked up the phone with trembling fingers. "Ms. Murphy? Are you still there?" "I'm here," I whispered. "Can you come to my office this afternoon? I think you'll want to see these documents as soon as possible." Yes, I'll be there." After I hung up, I sat in my tiny kitchen for a long time, watching Buttons eat his breakfast like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. In the space of one phone call, I'd gone from someone who had lost everything to someone who had been robbed. My own brother had stolen from me. While I was fighting for my life in rehab, learning to live without drugs, rebuilding myself from nothing, Camden was living off money that was half mine. But here's what Attorney Holbrook didn't tell me during that phone call. Here's what I wouldn't learn until much later. The $300,000 was just the beginning. Camden's lies went so much deeper than money. And the truth about why he stole from me, the real truth, would turn out to be more devastating than anything I could have imagined. I threw on my cleanest jeans and the one nice sweater I owned, then drove to Attorney Holbrook's office with my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. My hands kept sweating on the steering wheel of my beat-up Honda Civic. The car had 200,000 miles on it and a crack in the windshield, but it was mine. I'd bought it with money from my job at the animal shelter, and every payment felt like proof that I was building a real life. The law office building was fancy, with marble floors and oil paintings on the walls. I felt completely out of place in my thrift store clothes. The receptionist was wearing a suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. "I'm here to see Attorney Patricia Holbrook," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Of course, Ms. Murphy. She's expecting you." Patricia Holbrook was a woman in her 50s with gray hair pulled back in a neat bun and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. But her expression was serious as she gestured for me to sit across from her big wooden desk. "Sage, I'm going to be direct with you because you deserve the truth. Your father came to me 3 months before he died. He was very worried about your addiction, but he still wanted to make sure you were taken care of." She pulled out a thick manila folder and opened it in front of me. The papers inside looked official and important. "He split everything 50-50 between you and Camden. He hoped that having financial security might help you get clean someday. He loved you very much." Tears started falling down my cheeks before I could stop them. Dad had still believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. Even when I was stealing from him to buy drugs. Even when I screamed at him that I hated him during my last visit home. "But Camden told me Dad was disappointed in me," I said, wiping my eyes with the back of my hand. "He said Dad left everything to him because I was a drug addict who couldn't be trusted." Attorney Holbrook's jaw tightened. I could see anger flash in her eyes. "Camden has been telling people that story for 2 years. But look at this." She turned the folder toward me and showed me Dad's will. There it was, in black and white, written in legal language I could barely understand, but I could read my name clearly. Sage Murphy, 50% of all assets. My hands shook as I touched the paper. This was real. This was Dad's actual signature at the bottom. "Your brother needed your signature to transfer your half to himself," Attorney Holbrook continued. "Since you were unavailable, he's been illegally managing your inheritance. The house should be half yours. The business should be half yours. The savings account that's now empty, half of that money was yours." "Empty?" My voice came out as a whisper. "I'm afraid so. Camden has spent most of the liquid assets over the past 2 years, but the house and business are still worth about $400,000 total." I felt sick to my stomach. While I was fighting for my life in rehab, eating terrible food and sleeping on a thin mattress, crying myself to sleep every night, my own brother was living off money that was partly mine. While I was learning to live without drugs, going to group therapy, working through the wreckage of my past, he was spending my inheritance. "Why are you calling me now?" I asked, Why didn't you contact me before?" Attorney Holbrook looked uncomfortable. She took off her glasses and cleaned them slowly before answering. "Camden told me you had died of an overdose. He showed me what looked like a death certificate. I'm ashamed to say I didn't verify it properly. It wasn't until last week that I discovered you were alive." The room started spinning. "He told you I was dead?" "I'm so sorry, Sage. I should have done more research. I should have checked public records myself. But now that I know the truth, we need to act fast. I'm going to help you get what's rightfully yours." I couldn't speak. My brother hadn't just stolen my money. He had erased me completely. In his mind, in his story, I was already dead. It was easier for him that way. Dead people don't come back, asking for their inheritance. But I wasn't dead. I was alive. I was clean, and I was getting angrier by the minute. "What do I need to do?" I finally managed to ask. "First, we're going to confront Camden with the evidence. Then we're going to court if necessary. You have every legal right to half of that estate." I thought about Camden living in Dad's house, sleeping in Dad's bed, eating at Dad's kitchen table, all while telling people his sister was dead. "Can I see the fake death certificate?" Attorney Holbrook hesitated, then pulled out another paper. It looked official, with stamps and signatures. But there was my name, Sage Murphy, date of death, 6 months after Dad died. Cause of death, drug overdose. Looking at my own fake death certificate was the strangest feeling I'd ever experienced. It was like looking at an alternate universe where the worst thing that could have happened actually did happen. But it didn't happen. I survived. I got clean. I rebuilt my life from nothing. And now I was going to get back what was mine. I drove. Straight to Dad's house. My house. Half of it anyway. My hands were still shaking, but this time it was from pure rage. Camden's blue pickup truck was sitting in the driveway like it belonged there. The same truck he'd told me was his now. The same truck I'd helped Dad pick out at the dealership when I was 16. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, trying to calm down enough to walk to the front door without doing something I'd regret. The house looked exactly the same as it had when I was growing up. White paint with blue shutters, the flower garden Mom had planted before she died when I was 12. But now it felt like I was looking at a stranger's house. Finally, I got out of the car and walked up the front steps. Each step felt heavier than the last. I knocked on the door that should have been mine to walk through anytime I wanted. Camden opened it, and his face went completely white when he saw me. He was 3 years older than me, bigger and stronger, with the same dark hair and green eyes we'd inherited from Dad. But right now he looked like a scared little boy who'd been caught stealing cookies. "Sage? What are you doing here?" His voice cracked when he said my name like he really was seeing a ghost. "I think you know exactly why I'm here, Camden." He tried to close the door, but I pushed past him into the living room. Everything was different. New leather furniture, a huge flat-screen TV mounted on the wall, expensive-looking decorations everywhere. All bought with my money. "We need to talk. Now." Camden ran his hands through his hair, a nervous habit he'd had since we were kids. "Look, I can explain." "Explain what? How you told everyone I was dead? How you've been spending my inheritance for 2 years? How you let me think Dad hated me?" My voice was getting louder with each word. All the anger I'd been holding back since the lawyer's office came pouring out. "Dad did leave everything to me," he shouted back, but his voice cracked again. "You were a junkie, Sage. You would have just spent it all on drugs anyway." "That wasn't your decision to make," I screamed. "It was my money, my house, my choice to make mistakes with it if I wanted to." "You don't understand," Camden said, starting to pace around the room like a caged animal. "I had debts, big debts. I owed some very dangerous people a lot of money, and if I didn't pay them back? So you stole from your own sister? I didn't steal anything. I just borrowed it. I was going to pay you back when you got clean, if you got clean. The if hit me like a physical slap. My own brother hadn't believed I could recover. Well, guess what, Camden? I am clean, 8 months and counting, and I want what's mine. Camden's face changed then. The scared look disappeared, replaced by something cold and mean that I'd never seen before. You think you can just waltz in here and take everything? You think anyone's going to believe a junkie over me? You have no proof. It's your word against mine. I pulled out my phone and showed him the photos I'd taken of Dad's will at Attorney Holbrook's office. Actually, I have plenty of proof. Dad's will is very clear, and Attorney Holbrook is going to help me get every penny back. Camden grabbed the phone from my hands and stared at the photos. I watched his face change, from angry to terrified in the space of seconds. Holbrook? You talked to Patricia Holbrook? There was something in his voice that made my blood run cold. He wasn't just scared about getting caught stealing. He was scared about something much bigger. You know her pretty well, don't you? Since you've been lying to her for 2 years. Camden sat down hard on the expensive leather couch, the couch bought with my money. He put his head in his hands. Sage, you don't understand. Those people I owed money to, they're not the kind of people who forget debts, if I don't keep paying them. What people, Camden? What did you do? But he wouldn't answer. He just sat there staring at the floor like it held all the answers in the world. It doesn't matter, I said, my voice getting stronger. You're going to sell this house. You're going to give me my half of everything, and you're going to do it now or I'm calling the police. Camden looked up at me with tears in his eyes. Real tears, not the fake kind he used to cry when we were kids and he wanted to get out of trouble. If I do that, they'll kill me, Sage. I'm not kidding around. They'll actually kill me. For just a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Here was my big brother, who used to protect me from bullies at school, who taught me how to ride a bike, who held me when I cried after Mom died. And he was sitting in front of me, broken and scared. But then I remembered the fake death certificate. I remembered 2 years of thinking I had nothing while he lived like a king. You should have thought about that before you stole from your sister, I said. I walked toward the front door, then turned back to look at him one more time. You have 24 hours to call Attorney Holbrook and work out a payment plan. If you don't, I'm taking you to court. And Camden, next time you want to declare someone dead, make sure they actually are. Sage, wait. But I was already gone. I drove away with my hands shaking and my heart racing. I had stood up for myself. I had faced down the brother who betrayed me. I had been strong, but I had no idea that the worst betrayal was still to come. I had no idea that Camden's dangerous people weren't loan sharks or criminals at all. The truth about who he owed money to, and why, would destroy everything I thought I knew about my family. The next morning, Attorney Holbrook called me at 7 a.m. I was already awake, staring at the ceiling and thinking about Camden's terrified face when he saw the photos of Dad's will. Sage, we need to meet immediately. I've been investigating your brother's finances all night, and I've discovered something very disturbing. An hour later, I was back in her office. This time, her neat desk was covered with papers, bank statements, and computer printouts. She looked like she hadn't slept at all. I want to show you exactly where your money went, she said, putting on her reading glasses. Because it's not what your brother told you yesterday. She spread out a series of bank statements in front of me. The numbers were highlighted in yellow marker. Your inheritance was about $180,000 in cash, plus the house and business. Over the past 2 years, Camden withdrew this money in very specific amounts. Look at these patterns. I looked at the highlighted numbers. Every single month, Camden had withdrawn exactly $3,000. Never more, never less. Like clockwork. This isn't someone with gambling debts or loan sharks, Attorney Holbrook continued. This is someone making regular monthly payments to a specific person or organization. But he said he owed dangerous people money. Sage, I think your brother has been lying about more than just your inheritance. These payments, they're going to a private account. I traced the deposits. She showed me another bank statement. My eyes widened when I saw the name on the account. Riverside Memory Care Facility? It's a private nursing home about an hour from here. Very expensive. The kind of place that costs about $3,000 a month. My head was spinning. I felt like I was in some kind of twisted dream. I don't understand. Who would Camden be paying for at a nursing home? Attorney Holbrook looked at me with the same careful expression she'd had when she told me about the fake death certificate. Sage, I need to ask you something, and I want you to think very carefully before you answer. Do you remember your mother's funeral? The question came out of nowhere and hit me like a punch to the stomach. Of course I remember. I was 12 when she died of cancer. Dad and Camden and I all went to the funeral together. Are you absolutely sure about that? The way she asked made ice water run through my veins. What do you mean? Of course I'm sure. Mom died. We buried her. I visited her grave with Dad every year until I started using drugs. Attorney Holbrook pulled out another document from her pile of papers. Riverside Memory Care has had a patient named Eleanor Murphy for the past 15 years. She was admitted with early-onset Alzheimer's disease at age 45. Eleanor Murphy. My mother's name. That's impossible, I whispered. My mom is dead. She died of cancer when I was 12 years old. Sage, I think you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that your mother is alive, and that your brother has been using your inheritance money to pay for her care. The room tilted sideways. I gripped the arms of my chair to keep from falling over. But I went to her funeral. I saw her casket. I threw dirt on her grave. What exactly do you remember about that day? I tried to think back 16 years. I was 12, and I was completely devastated. I remembered crying until I couldn't breathe. I remembered Dad holding my hand so tight it hurt. I remembered Camden being angry about something, but I thought he was just upset about Mom dying. But when I really tried to remember the details, the church, the pastor, seeing Mom's body in the casket, everything was fuzzy and unclear. I don't remember the details. I was so upset that day. Everything is blurry. Sage, I think your father and Camden made a decision to tell you your mother had died because they thought you were too young to handle the truth about her condition. Alzheimer's disease can be very frightening for a child to witness. I couldn't breathe. My mother, who I had mourned for 16 years, who I talked to at her gravestone, who I missed every single day, might be alive? I need to see her, I said, standing up so fast I knocked over my chair. Right now, I need to go to that place and see if it's really her. Sage, wait. If this is true, you need to understand that she may not remember you. Alzheimer's patients in long-term care often don't recognize their own family members. I don't care. If my mother is alive, I need to see her. I need to know. Attorney. Holbrook nodded slowly. I'll drive you there myself, but first, we need to discuss what this means for your case against Camden. What do you mean? If Camden has been paying for your mother's care with your inheritance money, then he wasn't just stealing from you for himself. He was using it to take care of your family. That changes things legally. I sat back down, my mind spinning like a washing machine. But he still lied to me. He still let me think I had nothing. He still made me believe Mom was dead. Yes, he did. And that's still very wrong. But a judge might see this differently than if he had just spent the money on cars and vacations. I thought about Camden's tears yesterday, his real fear when I threatened to take him to court. Maybe he wasn't just scared about getting caught stealing. Maybe he was scared about what would happen to Mom if the money stopped coming. He was protecting her, I said quietly. All this time, he was protecting Mom. It appears so. But Sage, he was also protecting a lie that kept you from knowing your mother was alive. That lie has caused you tremendous emotional pain for 16 years. She was right. For 16 years, I had lived with the crushing weight of believing my mother was gone forever. How many nights had I cried myself to sleep, wishing I could see her one more time? How many times had I talked to her gravestone, begging her to somehow let me know she could hear me? How much of my drug use had been about trying to numb the pain of losing her so young? I want to see her, I said again, my voice stronger now. And then I want to understand why Camden thought it was okay to lie to me about this for so long. Attorney Holbrook gathered her papers into neat piles. There's one more thing, Sage. If your mother is alive and in medical care, then she's still legally entitled to make decisions about her own estate. Your father's will may not be the final word on who inherits what. My heart stopped. What does that mean? It means that if your mother is mentally competent enough to understand legal documents, she could potentially change everything about how your father's money gets divided. I stared at her. After everything I'd learned in the past 24 hours, there might be even more surprises waiting for me. But nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to discover. Because Mom's Alzheimer's hadn't taken all of her memories. She had been waiting 16 years to tell me a secret that would change everything I thought I knew about Dad, Camden, and why our family had really fallen apart. Riverside Memory Care looked like a fancy hotel from the outside. Beautiful gardens, clean walkways, and large windows that let in lots of sunlight. It didn't look like the scary place I had imagined in my worst nightmares. Attorney Holbrook and I walked up to the front desk together. My palms were sweating so badly, I had to wipe them on my jeans every few seconds. I felt like I might throw up right there in the lobby. "We're here to visit Eleanor Murphy," Attorney Holbrook told the receptionist. "Are you family?" the woman asked, looking at me with kind eyes. "I'm her daughter," I said, and the words felt completely strange coming out of my mouth. For 16 years, I had been someone whose mother was dead. Now I might be someone who still had a mother. "Oh, how wonderful! Eleanor will be so excited. She's been asking about Sage for years." I stopped walking so suddenly that Attorney Holbrook bumped into me. "She's been asking about me?" The receptionist nodded with a big smile. "Oh yes, all the time. She asks when Sage is coming to visit. We always tell her soon, because we didn't want to upset her by saying we didn't know." My legs almost gave out completely. Attorney Holbrook took my arm to steady me. "She remembers me?" "She has good days and bad days, but she definitely remembers. Having a daughter named Sage, she talks about you constantly, about your green eyes and how you used to help her in the garden." We followed a nurse down a long hallway lined with rooms. Some doors were open, and I could see elderly people watching TV or sleeping in comfortable chairs. It smelled like cleaning supplies, and fresh flowers, not like the terrible place I had imagined. "Here we are," the nurse said, stopping at room 23B. "Eleanor, you have some very special visitors." I looked through the doorway and saw a woman sitting by the window, looking out at the garden. She had gray hair pulled back in a soft bun, and she was wearing a pink sweater that looked warm and comfortable. She turned toward us, and I knew immediately that it was my mother. She was older, much grayer, and thinner than I remembered. But she had the same green eyes as me, the same small nose, the same way of tilting her head slightly when she was curious about something. "Mom?" I whispered. She looked at me for a long moment, and I could see her mind working, trying to place my face. Then her whole face lit up with the biggest, most beautiful smile I had ever seen. "Sage, my baby girl, look how grown up you are." I ran to her and threw my arms around her. She felt smaller than I remembered, more fragile. But she was warm and real and alive. She was actually alive. "I missed you so much, Mom. I thought you were dead. I thought you had been dead for 16 years. She pulled back and looked at me with confusion. "Dead? Who told you I was dead?" I looked at Attorney Holbrook, who was standing in the doorway, giving us some privacy but staying close enough to witness everything. "Dad and Camden told me you died of cancer when I was 12. Mom's face changed completely. The happiness disappeared, replaced by something that looked like pure anger. "They told you I was dead?" Her voice got louder and sharper. "Those liars! I knew they would do something like this." A nurse appeared in the doorway, looking concerned. "Is everything okay in here?" "We're fine," I said quickly. "Mom, can you tell me what happened? Why did Dad and Camden lie to me?" Mom took my hands in hers. Her hands were older and more wrinkled now, but they felt exactly like I remembered, from when I was little. "Sage, honey, I need to tell you something very important. Something I've been waiting to tell you for 16 long years." She looked around the room carefully, like she was making sure no one else could hear us. Then she leaned closer to me. "Your father didn't want me to tell you the truth about why I got sick. He thought it would hurt you too much to know." "What? Truth, Mom?" "The Alzheimer's disease. It didn't just happen by accident. It was caused by something your father did at his job." I felt cold all over, like someone had poured ice water into my veins. "What do you mean?" Mom's eyes were completely clear now, more focused than they had been since I walked into the room. "Your father worked at the chemical plant for 15 years before he opened the auto repair shop. Every day, he came home with contaminated work clothes. I washed those clothes by hand for years, breathing in those dangerous chemicals every single day." I couldn't catch my breath. "Mom, the doctors told us that the chemical exposure caused my early Alzheimer's disease. Your father knew it was his fault that I got sick. He felt so guilty, so ashamed of what he had done to me. But why lie to me about you being dead?" Mom's grip on my hands got tighter. "Because when I got really bad, when I didn't recognize you anymore, you tried to hurt yourself, Sage. You were only 12 years old and you couldn't handle seeing me like that. You told your father you wanted to die too so you could be with me." The memory came flooding back like a dam breaking. I remembered now. The confusion, the terror, watching my mother look at me like I was a complete stranger. I remembered locking myself in my bedroom and refusing to eat for days. I remembered telling Dad that I wanted to go to heaven to find the real Mom. Dad thought if you believed I was dead, you could grieve normally and move on with your life, instead of watching me disappear slowly piece by piece. He thought he was protecting you from more pain. But Camden knew the truth? Camden was 15. He could handle seeing me sick better than you could, and he promised your father he would take care of me after Dad died. I understood now why Camden had been so desperate to keep paying for Mom's care. He wasn't just stealing my money for himself. He had made a deathbed promise to our father. But, Mom, Camden used my inheritance money to pay for this place. Dad left half of everything to me. Mom's eyes got sharp and focused again, like a laser beam. Your inheritance? Sage, there's something else you need to know. Something very important. She looked around the room again, then pulled me even closer. Your father didn't just leave you half of his regular money, honey. He left you something much more valuable than that. What do you mean? Before your father died, he came here to visit me one last time. It was one of my good days, and I was thinking very clearly. He told me about his will, and I made him add something special to it. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "What did you make him add?" She smiled, and for just a moment she looked exactly like the mother I remembered from when I was little. "I made him write down the complete truth about my illness, about the chemical plant, about what really happened to our family. He wrote it all down and sealed it in an envelope with your name on it." "Mom, where is this envelope?" "It's in your father's safe, Sage, the one hidden behind the painting. In his bedroom. Camden doesn't know about it because your father only told me the combination." I felt like the whole world was spinning around me. "What's the combination, Mom?" "Your birthday, honey. Month, day, year. Your father said if anything ever happened to him, I should make sure you got that envelope." But then my memory got bad. Again, and I forgot for so long. I stood up, my mind racing in a million directions. There was evidence, real, written evidence, that could change everything. Not just about my inheritance, but about what had really happened to our family. "Mom, I have to go get that envelope right now." "Sage, wait." She grabbed my hand again with surprising strength. "There's one more thing in that safe. Something that will explain why Camden was so desperate to keep you away from the truth." "What is it?" Mom's eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed strong and clear. "Life insurance papers? Honey, your father had a very large life insurance policy that paid out when he died. But if the insurance company had found out that Dad's chemicals at work caused my illness, they could have refused to pay the money." My blood ran completely cold. "How much life insurance money?" $500,000, Sage. Money that Camden collected after your father died. Money he never told you existed. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even breathe. Camden hadn't just stolen my inheritance. He had hidden an entire life insurance payout that should have been split between us. But even that wasn't the biggest secret waiting for me in Dad's safe. The envelope Mom had made him write contained evidence that would expose the most devastating lie of all and make Camden's theft of my inheritance look like pocket change compared to what he had really stolen from me. I drove back to Dad's house with my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the steering wheel. Attorney Holbrook followed me in her car, and we had agreed that she would be my witness for whatever we found in Dad's safe. Camden's truck wasn't in the driveway. I was grateful for that. I wasn't ready to face him again, not until I knew the whole truth about what he had done to our family. I used the spare key that was still hidden under the fake rock by the front door. Some things never change, even when your whole world falls apart. The house felt completely different now that I knew the truth about Mom. I walked through the living room where we used to watch movies together on Friday nights, past the kitchen where she taught me to bake chocolate chip cookies, up the stairs to Dad's bedroom. The painting was still there, a boring landscape of mountains and trees that Mom had bought at a garage sale years ago. It looked innocent hanging on the wall, but behind it was the safe that might hold the answers to 16 years of lies. I lifted the painting off its hook with trembling hands. There it was, a small digital safe built right into the wall. The red display was blinking, asking for a 6-digit code. My birthday, 05 to 15 to 96. I typed the numbers with fingers that felt like they belonged to someone else. The safe beeped twice and clicked open with a soft sound. Inside were several documents, some jewelry that had belonged to my grandmother, and a thick white envelope with my name written on it in Dad's careful handwriting. I took out the envelope and sat on Dad's bed. Attorney Holbrook sat beside me, her face serious and worried. "Are you ready for this?" she asked gently. I nodded, even though I wasn't sure I would ever be ready. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were 4 documents that would change my life forever. The first was a letter from Dad to me, dated just 1 month before he died. The second was a medical report about Mom's chemical exposure and Alzheimer's diagnosis. The third was a life insurance policy for $500,000. with a yellow sticky note attached in Mom's handwriting. The fourth was something I never expected to see, adoption papers with my name on them. I read Dad's letter first, and with each word, my understanding of my family crumbled like a house, made of cards. My dearest Sage, if you are reading this, then something has happened to me, and I pray that Camden has finally told you the truth about your mother. I know we made the wrong choice by lying to you, but at the time it seemed like the only way to protect you from a pain too big for a child to carry. Your mother is the strongest, most loving woman I have ever known. Even with her terrible illness, she made me promise that you would know the complete truth someday. She made me write down exactly what happened with the chemicals, and why she got sick, and why our family fell apart. But there is another truth, Sage, one that is even harder to tell. You are not my biological daughter. Your real father was my younger brother Michael, who died in a car accident before you were born. Your mother was pregnant with you when Michael died, and she was all alone in the world. I married your mother because I loved her, and because I wanted to give you a father. I adopted you legally when you were 6 months old, but in my heart, you have always been my real daughter. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. Camden is your cousin, not your brother, but he doesn't know this. I never told him because I was afraid he would treat you differently. I wanted you both to grow up as real siblings. I also need you to know about the life insurance money. I collected $500,000 after my cancer diagnosis before the insurance company could investigate the connection between my work and your mother's illness. I put that money in a separate bank account that Camden doesn't know about. The account information is written on the back of this letter. That money is yours, Sage. All of it. It's for your future, your recovery, your life. Camden will inherit the house and business, but the life insurance money belongs to you. I'm sorry for all the lies. I'm sorry for the confusion and pain we caused you, but I never stopped, believing that you would get clean someday and that you would need to know who you really are. You are my daughter in every way that matters. Never doubt that. All my love forever, Dad. P.S. Your mother asked me to tell you that she's proud of the strong woman you've become, even when she can't always remember who you are. I read the letter 3 times before the words really sank, and then I started crying so hard that Attorney Holbrook had to take the letter from my hands to keep my tears from smudging the ink. I wasn't Dad's biological daughter. Camden wasn't really my brother. My real father was dead, and I had never even known his name until this moment. But somehow that wasn't even the part that hurt the most. Sage, look at this, Attorney Holbrook said, reading the medical report. This explains everything about your mother's condition. The medical report was 8 pages long and filled with medical terms I didn't understand. But the summary at the end was clear enough. Eleanor Murphy's early-onset Alzheimer's disease was directly caused by repeated exposure to industrial chemicals over a 15-year period. Your father was right to feel guilty, Attorney Holbrook said quietly. His work clothes really did make your mother sick. I turned over Dad's letter and found the bank account information written in his neat handwriting. Then I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and called the number. After going through security, questions and providing my social security number, I was connected to an account representative. Yes, Ms. Murphy, I can confirm your account. The current balance is $523,447.82. I hung up the phone and stared at Attorney Holbrook. It's real. The money is actually real. Sage, this changes everything about your case against Camden. You're not just a victim here. You actually have more money than he does. I looked at the adoption papers with my name typed neatly at the top. Sage Murphy, adopted daughter of Robert and Eleanor Murphy. Biological daughter of Michael Murphy, deceased. Camden doesn't know about any of this, I said slowly. He's been struggling to pay for Mom's care, thinking he was stealing from me, when actually there was enough money all along to take care of everything. What do you want to do now? I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, I could see the garden where Mom used to grow tomatoes and green beans, the driveway where Dad taught me to change a tire, the front yard where Camden and I used to play catch every summer evening. This house held so many memories, both beautiful and painful, but it also held the truth finally, after 16 years of lies. I want to call Camden, I said. I want him to come here right now, and I want to tell him everything about the money, about Mom being alive, about who I really am. Attorney. Holbrook looked worried. Sage, are you sure? He's been lying to you for years. He let you believe your mother was dead. He was also taking care of her, I said. He was keeping a promise to the man who raised me, even though it meant living with terrible guilt. That doesn't make the lies right, but it makes them understandable. I called Camden's number. He answered on the first ring, like he had been waiting by the phone. Sage, are you okay? I've been worried sick since yesterday. Camden, I need you to come to the house right now. I found Dad's safe. There was complete silence on the other end of the phone. You found what? Dad's safe. Behind the painting in his bedroom. I found everything, Camden. The life insurance papers, the bank account, the medical reports, everything. Sage, I can explain about the money. Just come home, Camden. We need to talk about Mom and about who I really am. 20 minutes later, I heard his truck in the driveway. He walked into the house looking like a man going to face a firing squad. But when he saw all the documents spread out on the coffee table, when he saw the adoption papers with my name on them, his face went completely white. Sage, he whispered. We're cousins, Camden. Dad was my adoptive father. Your Uncle Michael was my real father. Camden sat down hard in Dad's old recliner, the same chair where Dad used to watch baseball games on Sunday afternoons. I don't understand. Why didn't anyone ever tell me? Because Dad wanted us to grow up as real brother and sister. And we did, didn't we? Camden looked at me with tears in his eyes. You'll always be my sister, Sage. Blood doesn't matter. You're still my family. But there was one more document in that safe. One more secret that would explain why our family had been torn apart by more than just lies about money and adoption. The medical report contained a detail that Dad's letter hadn't mentioned. A detail that would reveal the real reason Camden had been so terrified of the truth coming out. 2 weeks later, we were all sitting in a courthouse conference room. Even though Camden and I had worked things out privately, Attorney Holbrook insisted we needed to make everything legal and official. The court needs to formally recognize the transfer of assets and establish a proper care plan for your mother, she explained. Plus, there are serious tax implications for all of this money that we need to handle correctly. Camden sat next to his own lawyer, a nervous-looking man in a wrinkled suit who kept shuffling papers and checking his watch. I sat with Attorney Holbrook, and we had all the documents from Dad's safe organized in neat folders. Judge Martinez was an older woman with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see right through people. She looked like she had seen every kind of family drama possible and wasn't impressed by any of it. This is quite an unusual case, Judge Martinez said, looking over our paperwork with a frown. We have allegations of inheritance theft, a supposedly dead woman who is very much alive, hidden life insurance policies, adoption secrets, and now both parties want to settle everything. Amicably. That's correct, Your Honor, Attorney Holbrook said. My client, Sage Murphy, is willing to work with her brother, her adoptive brother, to establish a fair division of assets, provided that proper care is maintained for their mother. Camden's lawyer stood up nervously. Your Honor, my client, acknowledges that he made some poor decisions over the past 2 years. but he was acting in what he believed were the family's best interests. Judge Martinez held up her hand for silence. Before we proceed with any settlement, I want to make sure I understand the full situation here. Ms. Murphy, you believed your mother was dead for 16 years? Yes, Your Honor. And Mr. Murphy, you allowed your sister to believe this while using her inheritance money to pay for your mother's care? Camden stood up quickly. Yes, Your Honor. I know it was wrong, but I was trying to honor a promise I made to my father. Sit down, Mr. Murphy. I'm not finished. Judge Martinez picked up the thick medical report from Dad's safe and put on her reading glasses. I've been reviewing these medical documents very carefully, and I have some serious concerns. Attorney Holbrook, did you read this entire report? Thoroughly. Yes, Your Honor. It clearly shows that Mrs. Murphy's Alzheimer's disease was caused by chemical exposure from her husband's workplace. Did you read page 7 of the report? Attorney Holbrook looked confused. She flipped through the medical report quickly, looking for page 7. I watched her face change as she read something that made her eyes go wide with shock. Your Honor, I think I missed something very important. Judge Martinez nodded grimly. Page 7 contains additional test results that were completed 6 months after the initial diagnosis. Results that change everything we thought we knew about this case. The room went completely silent. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. What does it say? I asked, though I was starting to feel sick to my stomach. It says, Judge Martinez continued, reading directly from the report, that Mrs. Eleanor Murphy tested positive for genetic markers that indicate she was predisposed to develop early-onset Alzheimer's, disease regardless of any environmental factors. I felt like I had been hit by a truck. What does that mean? It means that your mother carries specific genes that would have caused her to develop Alzheimer's disease, even if she had never been exposed to any chemicals at all. The environmental exposure may have made her symptoms appear slightly earlier, but it did not cause her illness. Camden made a choking sound. But Dad believed he was sure it was his fault. That's why he felt so guilty about everything. Judge Martinez set down the report and looked at us over her glasses. According to this medical report, your father was told about the genetic component by the doctors. But there's a note here that says he refused to believe it. He insisted that the chemicals were responsible, even when presented with clear evidence to the contrary. Attorney Holbrook was reading the report more carefully now. Your Honor, there's a note here. From the attending physician. It says they tried multiple times to explain the genetic testing results to Mr. Murphy, but he became agitated and refused to discuss it further. People sometimes choose to believe what fits their own narrative, Judge Martinez said sadly. Your father needed someone to blame for his wife's illness, so he blamed himself, even when the science said otherwise. I couldn't breathe properly. Everything I had learned about my family in the past 2 weeks was built on Dad's guilt about something that wasn't even his fault. But wait, Camden said suddenly, his voice shaking. If Dad knew about the genetic testing, why didn't he tell Mom? Why didn't he tell us? Judge Martinez looked at the medical report again. According to this, your father signed a specific waiver requesting that the genetic information not be shared with the patient or other family members. He prevented the doctors from telling anyone else about it. Why would he do that? I asked, feeling more confused than ever. Perhaps, Judge Martinez said gently, he thought it would be easier for your mother to have someone specific to blame rather than accept that her illness was just terrible luck. Guilt can be easier to handle than helplessness. The room was quiet for several long minutes. Then Camden spoke up, his voice barely above a whisper. Your Honor, I need to tell you something else. Something I haven't told anyone, not even my lawyer. His attorney tried to stop him, but Camden shook his head firmly. No, I need to say this. The night before Dad died, he called me to his hospital room. He was on a lot of pain medication and he was confused, but he kept saying he was sorry. He kept saying over and over that he had killed Mom. Camden's voice cracked with emotion. I thought he was just confused because of all the drugs. But he made me promise to take care of her. He said it was his fault she was sick, and it was our responsibility to make sure she had the best care possible. So you've been carrying out what you believed were your father's dying wishes, Judge Martinez said. Yes, Your Honor. Even when I used Sage's inheritance money, I thought I was doing what Dad wanted. I thought I was protecting the family from the truth about what he had done. I looked at my brother, my cousin, my adopted brother, whatever he was, for the first time with complete understanding. He wasn't a selfish thief. He was a man who had been carrying an impossible burden based on lies for 2 years. Camden, I said quietly, you could have told me the truth. You could have let me help you take care of Mom. I couldn't, he said, tears streaming down his face. You were so sick, Sage. You were barely alive when you went to rehab. And I thought if you knew Mom was alive but didn't remember you anymore, it would destroy any chance you had of getting better. Judge Martinez cleared her throat. This is all very moving, but we still have legal matters to resolve. Mr. Murphy, you did unlawfully use your sister's inheritance money, regardless of your motivations. I understand, Your Honor. However, the judge continued, given the unusual circumstances, and given that Ms. Murphy now has access to substantial funds that were unknown to both parties, I'm inclined to approve. A settlement that focuses on making things right going forward, rather than punishing past mistakes. Attorney. Holbrook stood up. Your Honor, my client proposes the following arrangement. Mr. Murphy will transfer full ownership of the family home and auto repair business to Ms. Murphy. In exchange, Ms. Murphy will use the life insurance funds to establish a trust for their mother's care, with both siblings as co-trustees. That sounds very reasonable, Judge Martinez said. Mr. Murphy, do you agree to these terms? Camden nodded. Yes, Your Honor, and I want to pay back every penny I took from Sage's original inheritance, even though she says I don't have to. That won't be necessary, I said, surprising everyone in the room, including myself. Camden, you used that money to take care of our mother for 2 years. You kept her safe and comfortable and loved. That's worth more than any amount of money could ever be. Judge Martinez smiled for the first time since we had entered the room. It's rare to see families work together like this after so much pain and confusion. I hereby approve the settlement. The house and business will be transferred to Ms. Murphy, and a trust will be established for Mrs. Murphy's ongoing care. But as we were gathering our papers to leave, Judge Martinez called me back to her desk. Ms. Murphy, there's one more thing you need to know. According to this medical report, your mother's genetic condition is hereditary. You and your brother should both be tested to see if either of you carries the same genes. My blood ran ice cold. What are the chances? Each child of a parent with these specific genetic markers has about a 50% chance of inheriting them. If you inherit the genes, it doesn't guarantee you'll get Alzheimer's, but it significantly increases your risk. I looked at Camden, and I could see the same fear in his eyes that I felt in my heart. Your Honor, I said, if we get tested and we both have the genes, what happens then? Then you plan for the future while you still can, Judge Martinez said simply. Sure. Your mother's trust is large enough to potentially care for 3 people instead of 1. And you make sure you both have all your legal documents in place while you're still able to make clear decisions. Walking out of the courthouse, Camden and I didn't speak for several minutes. Finally, he broke the silence. Are you going to get tested? He asked. I don't know. Are you? I don't know either. We reached our cars, and Camden turned to face me. "Sage, I'm sorry for everything. For lying to you, for taking your money, for letting you think. Mom was dead. I thought I was protecting everyone, but I just made everything so much worse." I hugged my brother, my cousin, my family, for the first time in years. "We were all just trying to survive," I said. "Dad was trying to protect us from the truth about Mom. You were trying to protect me from the truth about Dad. And I was trying to protect myself from the truth about everything. What do we do now?" I looked back at the courthouse, then at my brother. "Now we go see Mom together, and we tell her that Dad has finally been able to forgive himself." But there was one final secret that even the medical report hadn't revealed. Something Mom had been waiting to tell us on one of her clearest days. Something about the real reason Dad had been so desperate to keep our family together, even through lies and guilt and impossible choices. Camden and I drove to Riverside, memory care together in my car. We had decided that, whatever happened next, we would face it as a family. The real kind of family, the kind built on choice and love instead of just blood. "I keep thinking about what the judge said," Camden said as we pulled into the parking lot, "about getting tested for the gene." "Me too, but let's focus on Mom. Right now, she's been waiting 16 years to have both her children visit her at the same time." We walked through the familiar hallways to room 23B. Mom was sitting in the same chair by the window, but today she seemed more alert, more present than I had seen her before. There was a brightness in her green eyes that reminded me of the mother I remembered from childhood. "Sage and Camden." She stood up carefully and hugged us both. "My children are here together. This is the best day I've had in so long." For a moment, she seemed completely normal, like the illness had never touched her at all. "Mom, we need to talk to you about Dad," I said gently. "We found some papers in his safe." Mom's expression became serious, but also relieved. "You found the medical report?" "Yes, and the life insurance papers, and Dad's letter to me." "And the adoption papers," Camden added quietly. Mom nodded and sat back down slowly. "I was wondering when you would find those things. Your father thought he was so clever, hiding everything from both of you." "Mom, the medical report says your Alzheimer's is genetic, that Dad didn't cause it with the chemicals from his work." "I know, sweetheart." Camden and I looked at each other in shock. "You know?" "Of course I know. I've known since the day the doctors first told us about the test results. But Dad thought—" "Your father chose to believe what he wanted to believe," Mom said firmly. "The doctors explained the genetic component very clearly. They showed us charts and research papers, but he refused to accept it." I sat down on the bed facing her. "Why didn't you make him accept the truth?" Mom was quiet for a long time, looking out at the garden where spring flowers were starting to bloom. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, sadder. "Because I needed him to feel responsible." "What do you mean?" "Sage, Camden, there's something about our family that you don't know. Something I've been waiting 16 years to tell you when you were both ready to hear it." She looked at both of us carefully, like she was deciding whether we were strong enough for one more painful truth. "Your father and I were having very serious problems in our marriage before I got sick." My heart sank. "What kind of problems?" "He was having an affair." The words hit me like a physical blow. Dad, the man I had idolized my whole life, the man I thought was perfect, the man who had loved me enough to adopt me, had been cheating on Mom. "With who?" Camden asked, his voice tight with anger. "A woman from his work at the chemical plant. It had been going on for about 8 months, before my diagnosis." I felt sick to my stomach. "Mom, why didn't you ever tell us?" Because when I got sick, everything changed completely. The affair ended immediately. Your father was so consumed with guilt, first about the affair, then about thinking he had caused my illness, that he became the most devoted husband and father you could possibly imagine. She reached for both our hands. The guilt saved our marriage, kids, and it saved our family. But he was living a lie, Camden protested. Yes, he was, but it was a lie that made him into the man I always wished he could be. I couldn't process what I was hearing. So you let him think he had made you sick because you wanted him to feel guilty about the affair? Not exactly, Mom said carefully. At first, I corrected him constantly. I told him over and over that the illness was genetic, that the chemicals had nothing to do with it. But he wouldn't listen. And eventually, I realized that his guilt was making him a better person than he had ever been before. She stood up slowly and walked to her dresser, where she pulled out a small photo album I had never seen before. Look at these pictures, Sage. She showed me photographs of our family from after her diagnosis. Dad pushing her wheelchair. Through the park. Dad helping her with physical therapy exercises. Dad reading to her when she couldn't focus on books anymore. Dad feeding her when her hands shook too much to hold a spoon. Before I got sick, your father was distant and selfish. He worked late every night, went out drinking with friends on weekends, left me to handle everything at home alone. The affair was just the worst part of a pattern that had been going on for years. But after I got sick, he never left my side. He quit working overtime. He stopped going out with his buddies. He learned to cook and clean, and take care of both you children. He became the husband and father I had always dreamed he could be. Camden was staring at the photos with confusion. I remember. Dad changed completely after your diagnosis. I thought it was just because he was scared of losing you. He was scared. But more than that, he felt responsible. And that sense of responsibility made him into the man who wrote that beautiful letter to Sage. The man who made sure both his children would be taken care of after he was gone. I felt like everything I thought I knew about my family was shifting again, like puzzle pieces, rearranging themselves into a completely different picture. Mom, are you saying you're glad Dad felt guilty? I'm saying that sometimes people need a reason to become their best selves. Your father's guilt, whether it was rational or not, made him into the man I fell in love with all over again. She sat back down and took our hands again. And I need you both to understand something very important. The love your father showed me in those final years, the devotion, the care, the way he held my hand every night when I was scared, that was real. It wasn't just guilt. It was love that grew out of almost losing what mattered most to him. But what about the affair? Camden asked. How could you forgive him for that? Mom smiled sadly. I forgave him because he never forgave himself. The man who had an affair was weak and scared and selfish. The man who took care of me for 12 years was strong and selfless and completely devoted to his family. They were the same person. But the guilt transformed him into someone better. I thought about my own transformation in recovery, how hitting rock bottom had forced me to become a completely different person than the one who had stolen money for drugs. Mom, do you think Dad would have changed if you hadn't gotten sick? I don't know, sweetheart, but I know that watching me slowly disappear made him realize what really mattered in life. And I know that taking care of me became the most important thing he ever did. There was a long silence in the room. Finally, Camden spoke up. Mom, there's something else we need to tell you. The medical report says Sage and I might have inherited the same genes that caused your illness. Mom's face became very serious. I know. I've been thinking about that possibility every single day for 16 years. Are you scared for us? I asked. Terrified, she said honestly. But I'm also hopeful. Why? Because you've both already been through your own kind of rock bottom. Sage, your addiction forced you to face the worst parts of yourself and become stronger. Camden, your gambling and the guilt you've been carrying about lying to Sage, that's been your rock bottom. She looked at both of us with clear, focused eyes. If you do have the genes, you won't face this illness the way I did, alone and confused and angry. You'll face it together as a family, and you'll face it with all the wisdom you've gained from your own struggles. What if we both get sick? Camden asked quietly. Then you'll take care of each other, just like your father took care of me. And you'll do it with honesty instead of lies, with truth instead of guilt. I realized something important in that moment. Mom, you've been waiting 16 years to tell us all of this. Yes. Why now? Why today? Mom looked out the window again, then back at us with the clearest, most lucid expression I had seen from her since my first visit. Because I can feel myself slipping away again. The good days are getting fewer and farther between, and I needed to make sure you understood that love can grow from the strangest places, even from guilt and lies and broken promises. She stood up and walked to the window one more time. Your father wasn't perfect, kids, but his imperfections led him to a kind of love that was deeper and more real than anything he had felt before. And your imperfections, Sage's addiction, Camden's, gambling, even my illness, have brought us to this moment where we can finally be completely honest with each other. I joined her at the window. Do you think Dad would be proud of us? I think your father would be amazed that his children turned out to be stronger and more loving than he ever was. Camden came over and put his arms around both of us. I love you, Mom. And I'm sorry it took so long for us to be a real family. We were always a real family, Mom said softly. We were just a broken one for a while. But broken things can be put back together, sometimes even stronger than they were before. As we stood there together, looking out at the garden where flowers were blooming despite the late winter cold, I realized that this was what healing looked like. Not perfect, not without scars, but real and honest and full of the kind of love that grows from truly understanding each other. Mom, I said, Camden and I have decided something. What's that? We're both going to get tested for the genes. Together. And whatever we find out, we're going to face it as a family. Mom smiled, and in that smile I could see the woman who had raised me, who had loved Dad through his worst mistakes, who had carried 16 years of secrets to protect her children. That's the bravest thing I've ever heard, she said. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I understood what it really meant to be brave, not avoiding the truth, but facing it head-on with the people you love standing beside you. 6 months later, Camden and I got our test results together. I carry 1 copy of the gene, increased risk, but not certainty. Camden carries no copies. At all. We were lucky. But even if we hadn't been, we learned something more valuable than luck, that families aren't defined by their genetics or their mistakes, but by their willingness to love each other through the truth, no matter how painful it might be. And sometimes, the deepest truths are the ones that teach us how to forgive, not just others, but ourselves. And that's how I learned that sometimes, the people who hurt us the most are the ones trying to save us. Camden didn't steal from me. He was protecting a family that was falling apart. But I want to hear from you. Where are you listening from right now? Drop a comment and let me know what city or country you're in. It always amazes me how these stories connect people from all over the world. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories about forgiveness, family, and second chances. And don't forget to subscribe to spread a little more kindness in this world. We all need more stories that remind us what really matters. There's another powerful story appearing on your screen right now about a family who discovered an incredible secret. Click on it, and I'll see you there. Thanks for listening, and remember, sometimes the hardest person to forgive is yourself.